Okay, it is 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Moving to item 2.0, adoption of the agenda. Bring your attention, we do have an addendum to the motion.
So moved.
Second.
Move to adopt the agenda with the addendum. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. 3.0, approval of the minutes from January 17th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 4.0, consideration of bills and warrants.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to pay those bills and warrants. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 5.0, hearing of requests and suggestions of citizens and organizations. Anybody not already on the agenda wish to speak? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll move to item 6.0. Mr. Spielbush is here to present our audit report.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
Like I said, my name is Kyle Spielbush with Jared, Gilmore, and Phillips, and I'm just here to walk you through your packet, kind of point out some things that I think might be of importance to you. Like usual, there's those packet of letters at the front. We'll hit those at the very end. I will actually start on pages 1 through 3, and that's the independent audit report. This, as well as a couple other reports towards the back of this, are the only thing that actually belong to us as auditors. Everything else in here is your information, your numbers, and we just take it and put it in the prescribed format by KMAG. You will notice, if you've been on the board before and seen these reports, this report did change drastically from previous years. Some new regulations and statutes came out, and they actually bumped these opinion paragraphs up to the first page. I guess people got tired of reading to the third page to find the most important part. So that first paragraph is what we audited, which is the accompanying fund summary statement of regulatory basis, receipts, expenditures, and unencumbered cash balances for USD 503 for the year ended June 30, 2022. That next paragraph talks about an adverse opinion on U.S. GAAP financials. Since we elect to follow KMAG, which is mainly a cash basis of accounting, we issue an adverse opinion on GAAP financials because you'd have material differences for things such as receivables, prepaids, etc. With KMAG, you just simply have cash and accounts payable. That third paragraph, always the most important. That's that unmodified opinion on regulatory basis of accounting. We believe that the numbers presented herein are a material accurate representation of what happened during the year. Those next two paragraphs kind of touch a little bit more on that adverse and unmodified opinion. Down there at the bottom, we get into management's responsibilities. That carries over to page 2. Management's responsible for making sure that our numbers are correct, as well as making sure that kind of our checks and balances, our controls are operating throughout the year. Next section there on page 2 talks about our responsibilities as auditors. We audit according to generally accepted auditing standards and then also government auditing standards. Since we receive a large amount of federal funds, the district also has to have what they call a single audit, which has a separate report at the back where we look at kind of the grant dollars just to do some testing on those. Finally, those last couple paragraphs there on page 2 that carry over to page 3 talk about supplementary information required by KMAG. That's at the back of this, as well as talking about that government auditing standards. You can actually issue 2 separate reports, one on the single audit, one on the financial statement. We choose to put those together just so they're right there together, easy to access. If you turn over to pages 4 and 5, this is kind of the meat and potatoes of the audit per se. This is statement 1. Over there on the far left, we list out all the various funds held by the district. And then we've got our beginning unencumbered cash balances, or our cash carryover for budget purposes. Then we have any canceled encumbrances from the prior year. These are things that we charged the prior year, but we didn't actually spend the full amount that we charged, so we're able to add those back to the funds. Then we get our receipts, that money we brought in, and then our expenditures, the money we sent out the door, to finally get to our ending unencumbered cash balances. Now with following KMAG, there's about a 10-page checklist of some various regulations and statutes districts are required to adhere to. One of those is that each fund ends in a positive cash balance. So as you glance through that ending unencumbered cash balance, you will note that we did have one negative. That is allowable. That's a grant fund because, we get most of those funds through reimbursement. We've got to spend that money up front. So the state recognizes that that's allowable, then it happens. That next column is going to be those accounts payable items, kind of that special caveat that makes it a modified cash basis, that KMAG. These are bills that we're going to pay in July and August for services attributed back to the previous fiscal year. Things that we got in June, as well as kind of our non-lump payroll that goes on in July and August. And then we get to that ending cash balances on that far right column. And then that ties to, on page 5, we kind of break it down there at the bottom between the various types of accounts that the district holds. Starting on page 6, we get into the footnotes of the audit. I'll kind of skim through these because these are kind of the words behind the numbers. I'll just kind of point out some that I think might be of importance to you. Footnote number 1, pretty cookie cutter. It doesn't change much. Talks about KMAG, talks about Kansas budget law, things of those nature. It's good to reread that each year as members of the board, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because it really doesn't change much year in and year out. Footnote number 2 is always an important one. That's that stewardship, compliance, and accountability. If we had any issues with that 10-page checklist, this is where we would disclose them. That long paragraph is kind of touching on that negative cash balance in those ESSER grant funds, and then we cite the statute that makes that allowable. And then we also talk about how we were in compliance with the budget laws, and we'll see a schedule of this at the back of the audit. Footnote number 3 just talks a little bit about deposits and investments. I won't spend a lot of time. It really doesn't change much other than updating the information as far as what our carrying amount of deposits are. Over there on page 10, footnote number 4, that's always one of those special ones with school districts. That's that in substance received in transit. This is money we receive in July that's attributable, kind of like that payable, but it's actually cash we're receiving for the previous fiscal year, that last quarter of the year, and that amount was a little over $545,000. Footnotes number 5 and 6 changed a little bit as well. Some more statutes and regulations came out that kind of changed how we look at leases. They used to be called capital leases. Now we refer to them as finance leases. And then they used to have what they call operating leases. And now those are just known as right-to-use contracts. They kind of got rid of that operating lease moniker per se. So footnote number 5, that finance lease, those are things that we're leasing, and we're actually going to own those at the end of the year. And that was the acquisition of and installation of some energy management system from previous years. This footnote just discloses what those future payments are that we're going to make, as well as getting rid of and then showing kind of a breakdown from that total amount to our principal balances. Footnote number 6 is those right-to-use contracts, and these are equipment that we're renting, but we're never actually going to own at the end of that agreement. And as you can see, we just have some various equipment, and we spent a little over $26,000 on that. Footnote number 7, always an important one, that's that long-term debt schedule. This just breaks down the debt instruments held by the district, and this is just that lease that we just talked about on the previous page, just kind of breaks it down into a more table format, as well as lists out those future payments again. Footnote number 8, that defined benefit pension plan, that's that CAPERS footnote. The first couple paragraphs, pretty general information. They don't change much year in and year out. That third one, we just disclose what kind of the changes in the employer rates are for the year. Those next two there on page 12 talk about what's going on at the legislative level with CAPERS. And then that very last paragraph there at the bottom of page 12 actually talks about how much we remitted on behalf of our employees, a little over $1.2 million. Always that scariest footnote in here, page 13, that net pension liability. That's that amount, since CAPERS is underfunded, of what we would owe if it were ever quit being funded by the state. Obviously, we don't ever foresee that happening, but since it is underfunded and that number is pretty large, you can see it's a little over 9.1 million, we are required to disclose that. I do like to point out on this one that from the previous year, this number did decrease quite a bit, so it was going a positive direction. And then we just got the new report recently, and it actually lost everything that it gained, so unfortunately it went back the opposite direction again. So, footnote number 9, other long-term obligations. This just kind of breaks down our vacation and sick leave. Really no major changes other than there on page 14. Under that numbered list, we just disclosed kind of that calculated amount of dollars of carryover hours from one year to the next of our vacation leave for our employees. Footnote number 10, 11, and 12, cookie cutter footnotes. Really no major changes from previous years. Footnote number 13 relates to interfund transfers. Always the biggest thing is takeaway is that all our transfers had statutory authority to be made. And then finally that last footnote, subsequent events. That's kind of anything major that happens from the end of the fiscal year to when we issue the audit. We didn't really have anything large to disclose there. Now we get to that supplementary information. Schedule 1 is our budgetary comparison schedule. This just breaks down all our budgeted funds. It gives our certified budget, our adjustments to comply with the legal max just based on enrollment numbers, adjustments for qualifying budget credits, kind of things that we expect outside funding for. We don't necessarily have to budget our dollars because we're getting grant or loan proceeds, etc., to pay for those amounts. And we add those 3 columns to get that total budget, and then we compare it to our expenditures charged for each of those funds. That biggest column to look at, that far right one, the one time that a negative number is a good thing, that means we were under budget in all our funds. Obviously, that general fund was over by 7 cents. The state gives you $1 leeway, so no major issues there. These next few pages, we're not really going to spend a lot of time on them because we'd be here all night if we did. These are the individual fund summary statements. These are really good to review. They break into more detail as far as where our money came from, where our money went, and it just gives you prior year information and current year information so you can kind of see the trends of what's happened from one year to the next. And then you've got our budget by line item and then our variance over under by budget by line item. So this is really good to review. It just gives you more detail as far as kind of what happened within our funds throughout the year. I always like to remind boards that budgets are adhered to in total by the fund, not necessarily by line item. So if you see large swings one line item to the next, it's not a real major. The biggest thing you're looking for is the end of the total amount. Now we get to pages 45 and 46 and 7. 45 is our district activity funds, our agency funds for all our various student accounts that are held in our accounts, but they don't actually belong to the school district. We're just required to list what those are, beginning cash balances, receipts, disbursements, and the ending cash balances. And then 46 and 47 are kind of the same thing. These are those student activity accounts again that actually do belong to the districts. And so it just gives a breakdown as far as what those are, and it's kind of the same setup as statement 1. Beginning on page 48, now we get to that single audit portion. Page 48 is what they call the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Awards. This just breaks down into more detail all the various grants, federal dollars that we're spending as the district during the year. There on the far left, it breaks out all the different grants by the various departments of the government, then if they're passed through anyone, as well as the final name of the grant. That next column is our pass-through entity identifying number. That's just a special number attached to the district. That federal CFDA number is a 5-digit number that's assigned by the government to each grant just to help keep them separate. Provided to subrecipients, if we receive grant money and then in turn pass that grant money on, that would go in that column. Next column's receipts, and the next column's expenditures. If you compare this to last year's audit, you see this number did jump up quite a bit, and that's just to be expected with all that ESSER money that we're receiving. Now with the single audit portion, since we spent more than $750,000, that's what triggers that single audit. We have to look at some programs. We have to cover a certain dollar amount. So the programs we did select are that ESSER money and then the Title I grant. And then we'll see that later on. Pages 49 and 50, I kind of make light of this report. We don't actually issue an opinion in this report, and it really doesn't change much year in and year out. This is talking about internal control over financial reporting. If we had issues with bank recs, the various things not tying out, invoices not being supported, things of those nature, we disclose those. We didn't have any issues to disclose when it came to financial reporting, but I encourage you to read through that, kind of see those things that we might talk about. If you turn over to pages 51 through 53, this is that report on each major program, that single audit, those grant dollars we tested. It's set up in the exact same format as that first report we looked at the beginning of the presentation, where we talk about the opinion at the very front, and that's the most important part. And in that second paragraph, we're basically stating that we believe, based on our grant testing, that we met all the compliance requirements for all our grant dollars, and we didn't have any issues to disclose in that. And once again, it's set up in kind of that same format, talks about management's responsibility, auditor's responsibility, and so on and so forth. Now, if you turn to page 54, you'll say we should have just skipped those reports, gone to page 54, and I shouldn't have been wasting your time. 54 is just a quick synopsis that gives you that same information, just in a quicker format. It talks about that financial statement, adverse opinion on GAAP, unmodified opinion on that regulatory basis of accounting, any issues in internal control over financial reporting or federal awards, our opinion on that federal awards report. if we had any findings to disclose, that identification of those major programs that we tested that I talked about, that Title I and ESSER money, that threshold for Type A and Type B programs, that's just gets into more of the weeds when it comes to picking our programs to test. Oddity qualified as a low risk. I always like to point this out. The districts are always going to be no if you ever pick to follow KMAG. One of the things you have to meet to be a low-risk auditee is you follow either GAAP or a state-required basis of accounting. KMAG is an optional basis of accounting. It's not required by the state. So we're always going to be a high risk per se. And all that really does is just change the percentage of grant dollars we test from 20% to 40%. So really nothing major when it comes to the district itself. And then if we had any findings, we would have those on page 54 and 55, and we didn't have any to disclose. Now we'll go back to that packet of letters at the front. These first 2 pages, that's what they call the presentation letter. In the past, if we had issues with management as far as getting us the information we need and making sure it was correct, things of those nature, we could just disclose that orally to the board. Now we're just simply required to put that in writing. We didn't have any issues to disclose. Tanya and Lori were great in helping us get all the information we needed. So I encourage you to read through there, but I won't spend a lot of time because it's pretty cookie cutter. It doesn't change much year in and year out, unless we have issues, obviously. The third page is our audit adjustments. This is another reflection on your staff. You can see it's really short, 2 audit adjustments. Some have 3, 4 pages of audit adjustments. So to only have 2, that's exemplary for a school district. And finally, the third page that gets into our management representation letter. We like to refer to this one as the reminder letter. During the audit, we should have talked about each one of these numbered points with management, with the board. And so we really like to call it that reminder letter because it's good for the board to reread that each year, kind of see all those various things that we might approach you about, might talk to you about, kind of put them in the back of your mind like, hey, this happened. We need to make sure to tell the auditor about it next year. That being said, do we have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Spielbuch tonight?
And if you guys ever come up with any, Lori, Tanya, they can always contact us. We're happy to answer anything throughout the year too. So.
Okay, I think you're good to go. Appreciate
All right.
your time.
Thank you.
You guys have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay, we are ready to move on to 7.0, report of the superintendent of school.
All right. Okay, so I've got a few things. I'm going to pop in my chair first. Feels like it's okay. All right. So the first one is, I just felt like I was sitting really low there for a minute. I don't know. Okay. On the first, I handed out a page that looks like this, and it talks about how I find current legislation and how do you find out who your legislators are in Topeka. And so I gave you the steps for doing that because a lot of times I think people will ask and they don't know exactly how to find it, and there's so much. Right now there is a tremendous amount of legislation out, and at first I wrote down all the House bills and the Senate bills that affect education and funding, and I wrote the little notes, and I thought, you don't want me to go through all of those things. I mean, that could take longer than the CPA report. But just know that right now there is all kinds of legislation that diverts money away from public schools. And that's a real concern because as a public school educator and superintendent, I think public schools offer an opportunity for all students everywhere, and it's important that we have the funding in which to do that because we've got the oversight, and all the forms of accountability that a lot of other places don't. But I want to show you where you could find any kind of legislation that you're interested in. So the first is you just go to kste.org, and then under here on policy and funding, you pull that down, and then you go down here where it says legislation, and you click on that. And these directions, I wrote them out for you, so they're on your paper. You click on that. Hopefully this works. And here where it says follow the legislative session, you can do it a couple different ways. You can click on the legislative bill tracker or bills being followed. So it looks different, so the information is the same. It just depends upon the format in which you want to look at it. So we look at it this way, it's all spread out, and it tells you the sponsor's name, and it also tells you the status of it. So where it's at in committee, if it's been introduced, referred, and this is everything, not just education, this is all of it. Now, the other way to look at it, we'll just click the back arrow, is bills being followed. And this is something that's a PDF, and it's updated every week. So for me, this is easier. But this is also 7 pages, front and back. But it gives you everything. And so this tells you who the sponsor's name is, but it gives you a short little title so that you can look at it and see, we can go through and say, oh, we're going to find House Bill 2218, which is that quote-unquote scholarship system, to use tax dollars to send kids to non-public schools. We can go down here and find that. And an SB is a Senate bill, and then you get down, then there's some HBs, and that's a House bill. Okay, so are there any questions on how to find a bill? I mean, if you're thinking you just want to read stuff, and stuff changes all the time as things are introduced, and then they're moved, and things are added, and so this is something that a lot of my admin meetings, our superintendent meetings, we're always talking about the legislative session right now, for sure. Okay, so there's that. Then the question is, someone asked the other day, well, how do I find out who my legislators are anyway? And so for us, it's Dan Goddard, who's our representative, and Virgil Peck, who's our senator. Now, here's how you can find it, though. If you go, I was going to type this up ahead of time, and now I'm going to do it right now, so I hope it works. You just go to Kansas Legislature. Let me make sure I get it spelled right. There we go. You just go to www.kansaslegislator.org, and there's everything you'd ever want to know. But over to the left, it says to find your legislator. You just click on it, and if you might know their name, might not know their name, but if you don't, I think the easiest way to do it is just to search by address, because we may be in Lebec County, but we may not have all the same representatives, depending upon how their areas and things are determined. So you just click on search by address, and it says, oh, wait a minute, you're going off the website. That's okay. We're going to go to this website right here, and it's just Discover Politics in your state and Congress. And so then put in our address, and I'm going to put Parsons, Kansas, and I'm going to click search, and everybody shows up. So for my state, it shows us Dan Goddard and Virgil Peck. Shows you our federal representatives, our elected officials there as well. This, if you click on their name, you click on Dan Goddard's name, this gives you everything. This gives you his email address, his website, and his phone number. And it also, over here, gives you a map that shows you what district he's serving. Okay? And so the same thing. And it also tells you that he's a Republican and what district he's in. Now, Virgil Peck, so he's our senator. There's his email. He has a variety of websites. There's his office phone number, his office address, and then what area he's serving. The other thing, too, on here is the bills that they have sponsored, which I think is really interesting. You can go and look to see Mr. Peck is sponsoring what bills. That means that those are the ones that he's bringing forth to the floor. So these are the 4 that he is,
Does it tell how they voted?
I don't think it tells how they voted on here,
It does on their page.
but on there, if you go to,
page.
yeah, it should on their website. It should tell on the legislative website once those have been made. But I just wanted to share with you ways that you could go and get that information, or if people ask how they could get that information, because there is a lot of information pertaining to schools that's out there right now in particular, that is of concern to those of us in public education. So did anybody have any questions about that? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Good information to have. Just like I kind of felt like a teacher. Got some good stuff to share. Okay, the other thing, next is the Winter Superintendent Summit. So this is something that superintendents from all across the state attend. It's in Wichita. It's 1 evening and 2 full days. And this year it was, let's see. See, look, I could have read through all those bills I wrote down.
I don't think that would be
No,
necessary.
it wasn't necessary, so you're welcome. Okay, 25th through the 27th was when we had the Superintendent Summit. And there were I want to say almost 100, there were 90 some of us there, so there was a big turnout. Bill Snyder was there and Kendall Gammon. They gave both of the keynotes, talking about leadership and teamwork and working to get just work ethic, and those were really good. Both of those were. And then there's always the sessions on budgeting, legislation, of course, negotiations, and then there's kind of an opportunity for some personalized professional development. And so for me, I wanted information on listening and how to really be present in a conversation and how to really listen to understand. And so someone from ESDAC was there and she had some information. So I shared that with you. Looks like this. These 4 different levels, 5 different levels, 6 levels. And it talks about why you listen. And I think it's so interesting because do you listen to worry and defend? And here's why. That's level 1, 2. Level 3, are you listening just to see how does this impact me? Like, okay, so what do I have to do next? What's the next thing? Are you listening for level 4? How can I support? How can I fix this? But then with that comes some judgment because that means things need to be fixed. And then level 5 and 6, really listening to understand. And so Jeff and I spent some time talking about it, and another administrator and I have spent some time talking about it. These are things that I'll probably share with the whole group of administrators in the next few weeks, but I really felt like that listening to understand, I thought it was good stuff. And it's important to be reminded. I've got a little sheet that we'll use before we go into administrator meetings to talk about, okay, what am I going to contribute today? How am I going to listen? And then afterwards, how did I listen? At what level and why might that be? So I thought that was really good. So those opportunities for professional development with other superintendents across the state with Greenbush and ESDAC are valuable. They're important. So did that. And then all the rest of it is really calendar type items. So coming up on March the 3rd, there's early student dismissal at noon because staff is working on grades. March the 6th and the 8th, we've got high school and middle school parent-teacher conferences from 4 until 7:30, and those are student-led conferences. So teachers and students are going to start calling parents this week and making those appointments. So those are student-led. And then the elementary, those parent-teacher conferences are the 7th and the 8th. So it's Monday and Wednesday, and it's Tuesday and Wednesday. That's when those conferences will be. There'll be something sent out March. Now the date slipped my mind. Next week, there'll be a link where you go in and sign up for elementary conferences through Sign Up Genius. We've done that a couple of years. So Matthew Peak has that set up and ready. So we've got that. That means after those nights of conferences, March the 10th is a comp day, so there won't be school that day. There won't be anyone working. March 13th through the 17th is spring recess, so that's our spring break. And our next regular board meeting will be on a Monday, March the 20th at 6 o'clock right here. So does anyone have any questions for me?
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, 8.0, we do need to have the reports from the principals this evening.
So Mr. Swanson from the high school won't be here this evening, but I know Mr. Barkus was here. And Mr. Pontius is at a senior night for his daughter as well. But Mr. Gordon will be here, so. You coming? Here he comes.
He's here.
I was sitting in the seat that never falls. Okay, this will be our principal report and my report. Start with IPS. As Lori said, we're gearing up for our student-led conferences on March 6th and 8th. So that has been the focus of our advisory time the past month. After spring break, we will start the freshmen working on color code and relating that to careers. Sophomores will begin the job shadowing activity, and juniors will be working on getting ready for mock interview day on April 29th. The job shadowing and mock interviews are new to our IPS this year. I'm sure some of them will be great, and there'll be things that we will evaluate as we move forward into next year. Some things coming up soon: orchestra concert Wednesday, February 22nd, which is tomorrow. Choir concert Thursday, March 2nd, and band will be the following Thursday, March 9th. We are also starting enrollment process this week. We will start with 9th grade and then move to 10th and 11th next week. Communities in schools will have their Finance Now activity on March 2nd during the morning. That's when banks and other businesses come in and they give them a budget to work with, and it's a pretty cool activity for our students. March 8th, the high school will dismiss at noon. The incoming freshman will come in for building tours. This gives them a chance to meet our teachers. Our teachers can tell about some of their programs and some of the electives that the students may be interested in. The spring play will be on Friday, March 24th and Saturday, March 25th in the high school auditorium. That was Mr. Swanson's part. Now comes my part, the activities in sports. Forensics has been on a tear. If you get the Parsons Sun, they've been on the front page, I think, 3 weeks in a row now. They've made the front page, so they're doing a great job. Scholars Bowl finished their first competitive season in 4 years. They attended 5 events. Their best finish was second place in Frontenac, so Scholars Bowl did a great job. The chess team, every event they attend on the weekends, they bring home trophies and plaques. Columbus, Chanute, Erie, just about everywhere they go, they bring home something. We had one wrestler qualify for state this year, sophomore Caden Berry at 120 pounds. He finished 4th at regional, and this is his 2nd straight year to qualify. He will wrestle Friday in Salina. Our TSA, all 7 Parsons officers attended and participated in the annual Winter Leadership Conference at Flint Hills Technical College. They competed in fashion design, transportation modeling, board game design, and forensic sciences. FCCLA competed in district competition for star events at Pitt State. 7 teams participated, and all 7 finished highest in their category, so they get to compete at state in April. Our girls basketball team, now 13-6, we will definitely host a home game next Wednesday. Probably be 6 o'clock, or 7 o'clock. It could be 7 depending on the distance that the other team has to travel, 7 or 6. Boys basketball, 10-9, most likely will travel the 28th of February, but there's still a chance that they could also have a home game. Our swimming program, Adia Marshall in swimming, he finished 7th in the 50 freestyle and 7th in the 100 freestyle in the league meet that was held in Osawatomie last week. And of course, our spring sports will be starting on Monday. I think that's it.
I think that's great.
So do we still give tours to the 8th graders over at St. Pat's for freshman orientation?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions for Mr. Barkus? Okay, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
All right. So next we've got Mr. Gordon out there.
How's it going, guys?
Good.
I didn't print it off before I came, so I'm using my Chromebook. All right, so the middle school. The times that we've presented to you guys, attendance is always our first wildly important goal at the middle school. Average daily attendance has stayed consistently kind of at 93% throughout the school year. It's on its way back up the past 2 weeks, kind of getting out of that cold and flu season as the sun's popping back out. Our attendance is getting a little bit better. We're starting to clear up. We're in the last quarter of our EMINTS training. So part of that EMINTS grant that, we were able to do 7th and 8th grade Chromebooks with and all of these additional technologies, we're kind of nearing the end. We're in our last design cycle, and we're in our last 20 hours of professional development. It was 72 professional development hours for the staff that were associated with it. We had to do a building project, and now we're working on the community project. We've put our application in for a grant at Parsons Area Community Foundation, and so we'll know if we receive that on May 1, and the students were a part of that entire design kind of leading up to it, and there was curriculum covered in all 4 core classes kind of along the way, so kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. It was a lot of work to get there, and now we're near the end of it. State assessment goals are math and ELA. social studies and science departments are coming up with, or have worked with their students in identifying what their goals are for the upcoming state assessments in mid-April. They're quickly approaching us. The building leadership team, we've decided to do a theme, and we kind of stole it from Mr. Freeze and his staff, and it's grind time, and it's just kind of best practices during testing to keep in their mind. We're going to promote it at our assemblies. We'll also promote it kind of with the parents in our week at a glance and kind of test prep leading up to it. I want the parents to know what dates the state assessments are, and I want kind of the entire middle school kind of culture and climate to see that coming. All right, and so that everybody's on the same page, we know when tests are, and we're going to give our best effort while we're there. And so grind is gather all possible information, return to the text, inspect each question carefully, and then narrow down the answer choices, and do not rush through the test. Students that give effort on the test throughout the day, they're going to be rewarded with a party. At the end of the day, or the last hour and a half, will be kind of rewards activities after, the testing fatigue whenever they're out. They are middle schoolers, and so we're going to look for opportunities for them to play afterwards. Spring rewards for the spring quarter or third quarter is Friday next week on that noon dismissal. Students that are passing all of their classes and don't receive discipline referrals this week or next week, they're going to be eligible for the rewards on Friday. And so they'll get 2 periods out of their classes where they can go pick out an activity that we have sponsored, whether it's outside or in the auditorium or community room, kind of around the building. Student-led conferences, I know Lori said something, and then Mr. Barker's presented on it also. We've got student-led conferences coming up on March 6th and March 8th. The students have their presentations. They have all the information that they need to kind of fill it up. They started making contacts and scheduling their student-led conferences with their parents and their staff or their Viking Time teachers. Last Wednesday, we invited them to bring their cell phones to class. They contacted their parents right then. And so we were able to get, I want to say 80% of them scheduled. There's still some parents that we're reaching out to this week and kind of working out times. So we're going to keep filling those. We're hoping for high participation in those. And yeah, next is activities and athletics. Mr. Pontius wants us to know that winter athletics are over. Boys basketball is finished up. Chess and Scholars Bowl have continued. They're still ongoing up until spring break. Our home chess tournament went really well. We wanted to make a huge thank you to Clara Killingsworth, Devin Ravig, our custodian, Dr. Forsyth for running the hospitality. And this was one of the biggest events in our district this year. We had 200 folks inside of the middle school on February 11th, and many were very complimentary of our facilities and the way that we set them up. Next, in the spring season, we've got boys tennis, track, and golf are going to start whenever we get back from spring break. That's the middle school report.
That's amazing that we had 200
Yeah.
for the chess. That's
They
really
invited a
grown.
number of schools. They fill up our gym, and it's dead, it's dead silent
It's so
inside of
quiet.
there. So all the kids, like, whenever the game is over, the match is over, they head out to the hallways, and in the hallways is where we have all the tables and stuff set up. It's not easy to set up either, because the maintenance crew has to go cover the floor with the tarp, and then also take all the tables out of the classrooms or out of the community room and hike them up to the second floor and set it all up. So it's a lot of logistics, kind of a lot of movement throughout the day. Our fax program sponsored the hospitality room, and then they also ran the concession stand.
Did you do the student-led conferences last year too? I knew the high school did.
Second semester we did, yeah.
Okay.
And so we're just kind of evolving it. We're getting closer to what last year we did, like a one-page cheat sheet, hard copy that the kids kind of went over, and it was small and kind of intimate with the parents. The closer we read the star recognition and the rubrics, that needs to be more of a presentation style, and it needs to follow them where they edit it every year, 6th through 8th grade, to where by the time they're 6th grade, for example, they all want to be professional football players. And so, but by the time they're seniors, it's very specific and accurate to their skills. And so at the middle school level, it's not nearly as in-depth as what the high school is doing, but it's a lot of,
a good
career
start.
clusters and personality quizzes and
It's just great, it'll all be electronic, so it'll be able to follow the child
Yes.
wherever they're, I mean,
Yeah.
the student.
And we've been meeting
All the grades.
regularly to kind of add to and make sure that we're, kind of growing and expanding the IPS program and kind of creating a scope and sequence and a focus, grade level to grade level, and I think we got some good plans for it.
Yeah, it's been really smooth. Yeah,
I like
Kelly
the
Lucas
students
is-
getting in touch with the parents too,
yeah.
bringing their phones, that's a neat idea.
Yeah, it was
Make
stole
that
from Jeff,
commitment.
yeah. That's because we've been hard on no phones inside of the classroom because we've been fighting for engagement being the number one
commitment
priority. Yeah, and so sent out a text message to the parents the night before, letting them know your student's going to be reaching out to you between 8 and 8:30 tomorrow. If you can't answer the phone, just, send back a text. But that's all they were doing was scheduling, and so put their phones up and went on about the day.
It's great.
Helps everybody, secretaries too.
Exactly, yeah, that's the
Big time
main
there.
driver.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
What if they don't have phones? Like, what if the middle schooler doesn't have phones? Oh, okay. Okay.
Ooh, I like all that blue.
Yeah.
Look at all
Blue.
that.
All
Love
light.
blue, a lot of blue.
Good evening. We're going to switch up. I get to go first tonight, right?
Yep.
Okay, so thank you for letting us be here. Some of the things that are going on elementary-wise, trash bag sales ended today. Next week, our yearbook sales ends, and then I think we'll have book fairs during our conferences. So busy week. Those are things outside of the classroom that's going on. Inside our building, next month, we really start talking about the state assessments, things that are happening, that our teachers control, our teachers lead, but we do a lot of things to have our kids, self-directed learners, not the right term, but we provide a lot of incentives to try to get these kids to be engaged. We purchased a program called Accelerated Reader for every 5 points. Kids get a prize every week. And then we use IXL. Ms. Piva drives a lot of this, our title team does, but we have an IXL leaderboard. These kids, they get in IXL. Any topics they pass, we have an IXL leaderboard, top 20. Kids get their pictures up on the board, they walk by when they're going to PE, they get to see their pictures. And every month we recognize the top 5 with a prize. And then we're doing the same thing with Study Island. Study Island's another self-directed activity our kids use. They log into ELA or math or science, and we challenge them to pass 4 topics. If they pass 4 topics, they get a prize, and if they pass all their topics, Ms. Pete's been going and purchasing Happy Meals for our kids. So these are all things our kids can be doing that we hope come state assessment time or during our MAP tests, those kids can meet or exceed those goals. And then Mr. Gordon mentioned attendance, and we as a building have been not wrestling with, but talking about best ways to incentivize our kids and recognize perfect attendance. All the while we're realizing, back when COVID happened, we didn't want kids to come to school sick, and so a lot of our teachers, they've got that teachers' kids, they don't want to miss anything. Like my son, Dad, Mom made me late to school, and I'm not going to get that 9-week award. So it's a balancing act of encouraging our kids to come every day because we can't teach them if they're not here, but at the same time, not overemphasizing things that may not be helpful. But this week, we had 69% of our 4th graders come, or last week, 69% of our 4th graders had perfect attendance, and 62% of our 5th graders. And I didn't track that every day like Tyler, or every week like Tyler did, but when Mr. Pegues and Ms. Ray started talking about it, I've been looking. And today's the day we kind of talked to our student body because we're thinking, what awards could we do? But if you've got 70 4th graders, they come up on the stage every week, and we're throwing Friday, get them some fries, all kinds of things to try to encourage better attendance. And then one of the positive things that's happening in our building that I'm proud of is, self-directed stuff with kids, try to encourage them to be here, and then what's happening in our classroom, because it's a school where, perfect attendance is perfect, and this is a school we're here to learn. So we do walkthroughs, and we've done 311 walkthroughs, and 99% of the time, it says teacher engaged with students. Now, there are times teachers have to be grading papers but 311 walkthroughs, and 99% of the time, our teachers are engaged in a small group, whole group, or individualized. So that's pretty impressive. And then we have two areas that we focus on. Posted objective has been one of those things that we think has the highest impact on learning. And we have that 87% of the time you walk into our classroom and the objective is posted and aligned with what's going on. And then I'm doing all the talking right now. You guys are doing all the listening. Teachers have a habit of that. Apparently I'm talking too long right now. But we, that gradual release model where we go from me to you to two. At Christmas, we noticed we'd only been with that partner share talk 9% of the time. Ms. Piva did a professional development activity on our professional development day, and now that 9% at 14%. So out of 311, we've gone up from 9. So the teachers are hearing us talk about it and then implement in the classroom, and that's kind of what you want. You want to all be going in the same direction, whatever cliche you want to use, but it makes me happy to know that the stuff that we talk about being important, when we're walking in the classrooms, we're seeing it, we're trying to implement it. So that's elementary and Guthrie. You guys are up.
We don't even need to.
I usually go last, that's why.
So I appreciate that administrators are talking about attendance because it's an issue throughout the United States. And if you don't talk about it, you'll never be able to resolve and solve it. So you got some incentives in place and you're working on, and you know that some of the kids that don't attend are lonely and anxious. So what about the chronic non-attenders? Do you see a packet of those?
Well, yeah, I think there's
I hate to say that.
That hits a couple things. You know, the first one is, for our age kids, it's mom and dad or brother, cousin, someone's taking them to school. If they're not making it, and then the second part of that is you want to have a building where kids want to be there. So that's, you want to attack that two ways. And Mr. McGee's done a good job of giving us weekly homework assignments. And my homework assignment 2 weeks ago was just that, and Connecticut has really started studying that attendance issue.
Right.
And the article basically said you got to get into people's homes in a non-threatening way and ask questions, how can we help? How do we get, and we're small enough and we know our kids well enough. There's 4 or 5 kids in our building that one of us will go pick up probably 10 times this year because mom's car broke down or whatever, but we probably need to be more proactive about getting into some of those homes where, for whatever reason, little baby Gage can't get to school.
So let me see if I have this correct. So administrators are taking the time out to go to parents' homes for kids that aren't coming to school to help resolve the issue. Is that what I hear you say?
Yes.
Not on a consistent basis.
Christina Mayhew is, though. Our social worker is. Christina Mayhew is doing a bunch of home
And
visits.
how many of those do we have?
Social workers?
How many social workers?
One.
One. Now, Robin Thomas is also assisting with that from our mental health liaison. So we don't like to send them by themselves, so we always send 2.
Okay.
But I'm not speaking for anybody but myself. I don't have a scheduled time to do that, but when every 2 weeks I pull the attendance and look and see, I've probably been in this year probably 5 or 6 homes where
That's
I
good.
talk to parents, and a little boy lives over there on 13th and Chess that needs a ride. I always say I'll have to come get you after the announcements, but 8:45 is better than not coming at all.
Not coming.
And and I think I know we all do that, but now that we have a social worker, it's more proactive or planned or purposeful. Mine's more reactionary when I see a problem, but going forward, I think I need to be do a better job of predicting and making sure you're not, a lot of times when the principal comes to the door and leaves a note, Mr. Freed was here, they're worried.
Yeah.
So, good
That's
question.
good.
But no more questions for me. That's rule number 1.
Oh, Lord.
You're up.
Okay, good evening. Garfield is winding down the end of third quarter and preparing for spring parent-teacher conferences. Matt Peak has been teaching our students about digital citizenship from a program called Common Sense Media. Some of the topics that have been covered in our classrooms are private information that students should never give out online, the importance of device-free time, such as supper time, and turning off their device 30 minutes before they go to bed. Many of our children are watching a device every night until they fall asleep. Our second graders went to Greenbush in January and learned about engineering. They created buildings and then watched to see if they could withstand an earthquake simulation. Ms. McClary and I recently met with each of our second and third grade teachers separately to go over their students' map data and their walkthrough data. And this was so that we could make sure that we are addressing the needs of students that did not make their expected growth. And we feel like those meetings went really well. Our recent World Read Aloud Day was a success. We were able to Zoom with some authors. Each class had 5 or 6 books read to them throughout the day by guest readers. And we had the Parsons High School softball girls come and read during the afternoon as well. Our after-school program currently has 58 kids enrolled, and this is happening 4 evenings a week. And then I want to say thank you to our PTO. They recently purchased Garfield a much-needed covering for our picnic tables that our kids eat on most of the time during pretty weather. And it was purchased locally and is a carport, and it fitted perfectly. The students have already started using it, not to eat on because it's been a little chilly, but they like to sit under it during recess and color, and they've been putting on little plays and stuff for each other under it. So thank you to PTO.
All right, well, Lincoln's is going to be really short because, just every time they say something, I can just mark it off my list. We did celebrate the 100th day of school and World Read Aloud Day on February 1st also, and we had some readers from Guthridge came over and read to our kids. We have a Viking Club, the after-school tutoring program, and we have about 38 students participating in that. Our book fair is going to be during Parent-Teachers Conference. February 27th through March 3rd, we're going to be celebrating Dr. Seuss Week, so we're going to have some fun activities that week and kind of like a spirit week to celebrate Dr. Seuss's birthday. April 4th, we're going to have our family title night, and we're going to play bingo this year. So it ought to be a lot of fun with pre-K, K1 bingoing. And we're going to have some drawings for some themed baskets that the classes are putting together. And I do want to just have a little celebration. We did our progress monitoring last week, and our kindergarten classes increased 17% from January 23rd to last week. So, I mean, that's a huge gain for a month. And our first grade class increased 18%. So good things are happening. Good things, good teachers, good kids, good things.
I have a comment. When I did the tour with you 3 weeks ago, and we went to all the kindergarten classes, I believe it was, and like 5 of those teachers were my former students, so it's kind of exciting because they were shocked to see me. And one of the things that impressed me was that book vending machine that you have, and kids earn tokens to get those books. And one of the little girls that put her token in was really excited. I'm just wondering why our other grade schools, and even middle school or high school, don't have those.
They're expensive.
I was just gonna say.
Yep. We've talked
How
about it
expensive
through
are they?
PTO. We've talked about funding one for Guthridge and Garfield as a potential project, a special project. I mean, they're very expensive.
Okay,
Shelley
how
can
much
tell
are
you.
they?
I think it was like
3,000 or 4,000
Yeah.
maybe.
And then the books.
But then
And
the
then-
books.
yeah.
And then also the books that are constantly going in. I mean, it's a constant expense.
And it's something special that's at Lincoln that the kids
Yeah, it's
have.
really cool.
that
It is a
real.
huge hit.
But you're right, they get so excited to earn those
yeah.
tokens.
Good investment in my eyes.
They pick them out, they want that one, so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
appreciate it. Okay, we're moving on to 9.0, report on the Tri-County Board meeting.
Okay, we had a good meeting. We had an audit report, and it was short. It was about 10 minutes long, which you got congratulated for. We had a donation, accept donation with a few euro gift for a teacher's, in honor of a teacher. And we appointed a negotiation team, and we extended contracts for our coordinators.
Hey, Mike, so, or Lori, has Emily McCambridge or Matt Asusi, whose father is a good friend of mine, have they visited Parsons School District in the last year?
Oh, yeah, Emily was here just last
Lots.
week. Yeah, I
Okay,
mean.
I was just curious.
yes.
I've never heard them, their names mentioned, or didn't know they were here.
No. So we meet every month. The superintendents typically go to Tri-County, and so we meet as a group. But Emily and Matt both have made trips here for our functional classrooms and done some work there and in our pre-K
That's
room.
good.
And then Emily and I met just last week to talk about next year already, so. They're regulars.
Any other questions? Okay, moving to 10.0, action to accept donations to schools.
All right, this is on page 32 in your packet. So as we go down, donations for the month of January 2023 at Lincoln, Parsons Walmart, toys and books for classrooms, $175. There was an anonymous donation for student prizes for the treasure box at $40. An anonymous donation of gently used coats for students in need, valued, estimated at $20, for a total of $235 at Lincoln. We can go on down. There were none at Garfield, Guthridge, or the middle school in January. At the high school, there was an anonymous donation for the building trades program, $49. Pepsi donated $1,000 for the scholarship program. Twin Valley Electric made a $25 donation to FCCLA. Community National Bank made a $75 donation to FCCLA. Tank Connection made a $200 donation to FCCLA. Wave Wireless made a $100 donation to FCCLA. Commercial Bank made a $50 donation to FCCLA. Pure Life Nutrition made a $25 donation to FCCLA. There was an anonymous donation of $20 to the CAD program. The American Legion, in memory of Ralph Rago, there was a donation of $50 for Honor Flight. An anonymous donation to the football program, $4,700, for a total of $6,294 at the high school. That met the total donations received by the school district in January of 2023, $6,529. I recommend that you approve those donations.
Move to accept the donations.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve those donations. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do we know what the $4,700 for the football program was?
Anonymous.
Anonymous
No,
donation.
not who, what?
I
Was it like a piece of equipment or anything
I
along
would
those
assume
lines?
it is in part of the renovation of
The locker
The locker rooms.
I
Okay, so we
forget,
got a
what does
mo-
FCCLA stand for? I always forget.
Oh, gosh.
Future community.
Community.
Oh, man, it's in my
Leaders of
notebook.
America. It is
It's
what.
FACS. It's your FACS program.
It's that club.
Okay.
Run through that. It's what Courtney Schaefer does. What's
I
it
have it
called?
on
Do you know
my-
what FCCLA is
I have it
called?
on my acronym list.
Oh, yes.
Well, come in here and tell us what it is.
Former FACS teacher.
Family, communities, and career leaders of America.
Thank you.
Family,
Community.
Communities,
Okay.
Career Leaders of America. Got it.
Okay, everybody remember that.
Yeah. I wrote it on my acronym sheet.
Okay.
Well, that works for me.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. And so we're going to have to vote before we got sidetracked by Mr. Ray's question about the donation.
approved.
We did not approve yet, have we?
No, we had a motion in a second.
And it was really my question that got us all off, so.
So this has been moved and seconded to accept those donations to schools. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'm gonna ask the question, what's the Pepsi scholarship? What's that? Is that something we get?
That is another scholarship that is
Does it come
awarded
to-
to high school student. It does not come through
Didn't
us.
come through us?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Doesn't come through the Education Foundation.
Okay, 10.1, action to approve the 23-24 high school course description handbook.
Okay, so we handed these out in January, and you had a chance to kind of go through them. I had one call, and it was on page 12 in the book. Olivia pointed out that at the top it says academic eligibility for athletics, but if you go through and read the subparagraphs, and then you look at all at the bottom, that graph, it includes activities. So the title really needs to say academic eligibility for athletics and activities. So that is a correction that will be made. I didn't have anyone else point out bring anything else up.
I sent stuff to Amanda.
You sent stuff to Amanda?
Just grammatical errors.
Oh, grammatical things.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay, need a motion on that?
So, hold on.
Go ahead.
On page 8, on the Kansas Providence Scholarship, I noticed that last week on Facebook, Chief Spinks from the Parsons Police Department was trying to promote that because there's a section in there that addresses the security police department, and it's nice to have someone in the community promote that because I think we only had 2 or 3 students that applied for that.
And I don't remember, I'd included that information in a view a few weeks ago, the number that had applied.
Pretty powerful scholarship, so anyhow, it's nice to have the chief do that.
Move to approve.
Second?
Moved and seconded to approve that high school course description handbook. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. 10-2, action on 23-24 academic calendar.
All right, so the proposed calendar begins with students on August the 17th, and it ends with students on May the 17th. The calendar includes the 168 days for students and 178 days for teachers, so there are 10 days of professional development. The calendar also features 4 early dismissal days at noon at the end of each quarter, so that staff can work on grades. Members of the committee this year, there's always representatives from each of the buildings and the board. Melissa Peak, Olivia Manley, Paul Deroni, Rob Barkus, Wendy Vaughn, Ryan Willis, Mary Fries, Debbie Schaefer, Tyler Gordon, Joanne Thompson, myself, Kurt was there as well. And so this is the calendar that this year Amanda had 3 draft calendars and gave it to everybody ahead of time. Usually, for some reason, historically, the way we've always done it is everyone would come, we'd hand out the draft calendars, and then they'd go back. We have email. So we sent them all out via email, and they shared them with staff and got feedback. And so it was only necessary to have 1 calendar committee meeting, which was nice. They came back with feedback and input, and this is what they agreed on to present. The only difference is there's that date in April for professional development. On the original calendar, it had been the 15th, which is neither here nor there. However, our letters training that we are doing, the second portion of that, there was not a trainer available on that day, but there was a trainer available on the 22nd. And so our pre-K through 5 teachers are doing that. So it makes sense. We don't want for them all to be out. We don't want to have to cancel school or get subs. That way, on the professional development day, the trainer can come here and do that. Things a little bit different this year is that end of grade card, end of the quarter, working on the grade cards, all of those are going to be on Mondays. So if someone's out for professional development, whether it be they're going to get out at, I almost said halftime, get out kind of at halftime, at lunch and go home, that's going to be on a Monday. If we have a day of professional development, once school is started, those are going to be on Mondays to help plan, help for parents to plan, but also it helps to prevent missing any kind of activities that are happening at school. It's hard to have athletic events and other things when kids aren't in school that day, just so.
Being on the committee, I thought the teachers and the admin that were on it just worked really collaboratively and listened to each other's ideas, kind of like, what you said. Everybody did listen to listen and to understand. So it was good, got good ideas and got it knocked out pretty fast.
Yes, I was pleased. So this would be the recommended calendar, that 23-24 draft.
I've got a question. So
Sure.
as far as the 168 days, how does that translate to the number of hours required versus, is there any built-in snow days?
So there are some built-in snow days, makeup days, at the board's discretion, those 3 days.
So it's
But
total
there's,
3.
Amanda's got the calendar. She has
I was
a,
looking it up because there's a spreadsheet where I just put in every single day and it calculates the hours and we're always above
Over
the hours.
So it translates essentially to we're over, these 168 translate to 3 days over what's required.
More than that.
Yeah, it's more.
it is more, because
Okay.
it's 1116.
11:16.
Yeah, it's 1116 that are required, and so we're at 168, but she's got it all on the calendar. KSDE, their auditing department provides a calendar that you can put it in, so, and it automatically calculates.
Got it.
That makes it easy, because then if we do have a snow day, we can deduct that. And currently, the way it works is for parent-teacher conferences or on professional development days, we get to count half of those hours towards the student hours.
Our teachers is full, isn't it?
Yeah, and for parent-teachers, it's full, yeah. And so like we have those 2 evenings of parent-teacher conferences, we will get to 7 hours, we'll get to count all 7 of those hours. On a day where we have professional development, we get to count half of those hours. So, but we can sure put that calendar in or let you know the number of minutes and all of that.
I was just curious to
Sure.
see how many approximate
How much
we had available for.
So do you have an update on what the Kansas legislators are trying to do by adding like 19 or 20 more days, as well as not counting
Adding
in-service
40%.
days?
It's a 40% increase, it's a 40% increase in HB 224.
Yeah, that's-
40% increase in time to go to school with no additional funding.
And that would be for the following years, what they're working on, right?
Right, and I'm not sure where that's at in committee,
Yeah.
or whether it's come out of committee, but that is really, there are these bills that are diverting public funds to non-public schools, so that, and then at the same time, there's another group that says, we want you in school 190 days, 8 hours a day, or 156 days, 4 days a week, but they have to be 10-hour days. So it's just kind of all over the board. And that's why it's so important for people to be informed, to be registered to vote, to be informed, and to get out and to vote and contact your
I think it's still in
legislators.
committee, because there was a hearing on it last Wednesday.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know where it's at in the process. We could look it up on that bill tracker. You could look it up and see where it's at, if it's still in committee.
That's HB 2224.
3 2s.
3 2s.
3 2s and a 4. But we also know that there was one bill in particular last week where they had testimony, and I wrote down the numbers because I really had a hard time imagining this, and that was House Bill 2218, and that was that scholarship using tax dollars, sending it to non-public. There were 296 pieces of testimony that day when they had testimony in committee, and out of that 296, there were only 26 that were in support of that. So we're talking 270 of those pieces of testimony were like, this is a bad plan. We don't like this, we do, overwhelmingly, and it still passed out of committee. So it's just important to know who your people are and to either call or email, make contact. So.
Okay, so we need a motion on this calendar.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the proposed 23-24 academic calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 10.3 and 10.4, we're going to table for a later meeting. We're not ready to act on those yet.
We don't have the folks yet from
Yep.
the insurance folks.
10.5, discussion and possible action on Washington School asbestos removal.
Okay, so you should have each gotten one of these that has the different costs broken down. This was in review a couple different times as well. We've had the Washington Task Force meeting, we've had facilities meetings, and I'll be honest, my first board meeting as superintendent, I remember Mr. Martino said to me, okay, so now what are you going to do about Washington School? On my very first board meeting 5 years ago. I thought, okay, so here we are. So here, I think, are some options. The first thing, in order for the board to move forward with anything at Washington, whether it be to keep the property, sell the property, whatever, the first thing we've got to do is have the asbestos abated. And so that came in at a cost of $115,491, which was less than what I had originally thought that it would be, and less than what it was just, I'd say, 18 months ago. So.
How much did you say?
$115,491.
Oh. That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That's not bad.
I didn't. Yeah.
Really?
We've got the money capital outlay to do it, right?
Well, we will have the money in capital outlay. This would be a project that we would do in 23-24.
So there are some possible grants that we might be able to get depending on what we decide to do with the building. And so all I would like this board to do is act on approving the asbestos removal at the proper time when we're going to have to discuss further what we're going to do with the building. And but we do need to move in this direction. So it's not that it's going to happen immediately, but we do need to move in this direction.
But depending upon if the board elects to sell this to just anyone, that can be done. Sell it to rural development for housing, that's another option, that would require some rezoning. Or if the board elects to do this and then, demolition the area and keep the property. All of those things, asbestos comes first, but we also need to know kind of down the road what the option will be, because that will determine other grants that we could apply for.
So if we choose to demolish, I forgot to ask this question, if we choose to eventually demolish, you have to do the asbestos abatement first. Is that a true statement?
Yes, that is correct.
On the other hand, if you choose to sell it as is, you do not have to do asbestos abatement. Is that a true statement?
That is not correct.
You have to do the asbestos either way, so.
Right, because no one is willing to purchase it with the
Well,
asbestos.
Hold on, I said if someone was willing to purchase
Oh.
it, it doesn't have to be done legally.
I do not know. In 5 years, I've not had anyone that's wanted to purchase it, and in fact, no one would even take it when it was just offered to be, basically.
I'm not trying to
Yeah.
throw any curves.
So, I don't know. I would assume that if someone bought it as is and accepted all the liability of that,
Right.
just like when you buy a house,
Okay.
but I don't know since it's asbestos.
How long is this bid, or is this a bid, or is this just an estimate from DCS?
This is an estimate from DCS, so it isn't something that's going to expire in 60 days. Now, the rates may change when we go forth and, look at it in 3 months or 6 months. But he didn't think that they would be much different than this. Part of that asbestos abatement is you've got to make sure that you take it to a landfill that is appropriately lined. It has all of the certifications needed to take friable asbestos and non-friable, so all the different categories.
And our landfill will take asbestos.
Yes. Because the first quote we got was a little bit higher, or quite a bit higher, because he thought they would have to go clear to Iola. But then on the second quote, they were able to.
So what do we want tonight? Do we want to just talk about this, or do we want to make a decision to go with asbestos abatement, or what are you looking for?
I just think that we need to approve the asbestos abatement, and then we're going to make some other decisions probably in the next couple of months, I would say. So, taking it one step at a time, so just approve the asbestos abatement.
I think so. Because then I can get with Laura at the city and see what all's offered if we go this direction. I can get with KSD and see here's what's offered if we choose to go this direction. And then, but then this way I can let the company know, hey, we want to move forward to abate it. So,
I'd make that motion to
Second.
do the Washington asbestos removal only.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the Washington asbestos removal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 10.6, discussion and possible action on special board meetings with each school. I had requested this, I think, several years ago, we used to go to each building and meet with the staff after school. I think it would be nice to do that again. We haven't done that for several years. And so, we don't need dates yet. I think we can have Lori email some possible dates and so forth. But I just wanted to make sure the whole board was on board with that. We would just kind of sit down with a question and answer session with each building, with the staff,
Would this
just to
be,
hear from them.
would this be in schools that you're not regularly in all the time, or?
All of them.
So it'd be
We
five.
as a
It
board
wouldn't
would
be
have a
like
special board meeting.
subcommittees
We would have a
between them?
special board meeting at each school after school,
with all 7 of us?
all 7 of us.
Or whoever can attend.
Whoever could attend. Yeah, if one of us is gone, that's fine, but yeah.
So it is an extra meeting?
It'd be 5 extra meetings.
Okay.
That's right. Generally, they would last no longer than an hour. Some of them only lasted 30 to 45 minutes, but hour tops.
Has faculty asked you about this at all, or you just think it's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea. We haven't heard from our staff in that type of setting, in their environment, for many years. I think it'd be good to do that.
So is administration present at these?
Yes. And we had talked about possibly, I know other places have kind of a board day where they have a special meeting and they go out and visit during the daytime and they see classes in action and see teachers and see students and those kinds of things. And we had visited about that and Jeff felt like it might make them too nervous since we haven't had any of these meetings where the board has been there. It might make them too nervous the first time, but maybe if we had a chance where they all, individually had their buildings, they could speak about things and share and show off some of the good things that they're doing in their buildings and just visit about concerns or whatever, that maybe next year, then we could go to a format where, okay, it's board member day, and so board members are going to come in and visit your classroom, and that way you get to see the really good stuff.
Yeah.
Not that the good stuff doesn't happen after school with staff, it does, but the magic is in the minutes when those kids are in those classrooms and those teachers and staff are teaching and working. So.
Any other thoughts?
Give us some dates.
Okay, so that's a motion?
Right now, okay.
All right. Second. No one wants to second, huh?
I'll second that.
Okay, all right. Moved and seconded to proceed with getting some dates for some special board meetings at each school. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 10.7, discussion and action on CASB resolution in support of public school. So you've got that, it's emailed out. You want to provide the background on that, and we can discuss it.
So this is on page 34 in your handout. This was something that KASB, the Kansas Association of School Boards, drafted and sent out to public educators everywhere, school boards everywhere, asking for their support of public schools. And as a school board, publicly supporting public schools. And it talks about the things that are happening, things that are in the article, and things that are in the Kansas Constitution regarding the responsibility for public education, so that they're asking for school board members to support that resolution and share that with their legislators and with KASB.
And this pretty well points to 2218, doesn't it?
Pardon me?
This pretty well points to
It does.
HB 2218.
2218, which is the scholarship one. There's a variety. There's the scholarship that's talking about moving the funds, but there's also, Senate Bill 83. There's
Senate Bill 128, too.
House Bill 2048, Senate Bill 128. There's a variety of legislation that is diverting public tax dollars, that wants to divert public tax dollars to non-public entities.
Do you think this is the main one, though, 2218?
I think it's the big one.
I mean, I do too, but I just want to know if that was the correct number, because I was going to watch it like she said. It is, okay.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I've read this carefully, and I'm in favor of this, the spirit of this particular resolution. There's some wording in here that was bothersome when they used the term fraudulently. However, I'm a Twitter follower, and the Twitter blew up a couple days ago. I don't know if you've seen that or not. There was a woman from Kansas, a Dr. Liz Meitz, M-E-I-T-Z, and she has 2 kids in the public schools, and she's a public school teacher. And basically what she was saying, be careful, legislators, for what you ask for with these vouchers. So she went on to, and I'm quoting her, these aren't my words, but she woke me up, and she woke up thousands of people on Twitter. And she said, originally she was opposed to that Senate Bill 2218. And then she talked to her colleagues, and she had a little change of heart. She said, House Bill 2218 will provide an opportunity for public school educators. She said, we are exhausted by regulations, oversights, and assessments, and evaluations that are meant to keep us in check. We are exhausted by being asked to educate all children, regardless of ability. And she says, you know, this bill will give us an opportunity to open our own schools where we can pick and choose our students and where we can decide on our curriculum and make a whole lot more money. And many of us educators are, as this committee has implied, atheists, socialists with radical political agendas who believe that critical race theory is the pinnacle of curricular political knowledge. We are currently hamstrung by administrative oversight and pedagogical research and student data. But this legislation can free us. We can set up shop in our own homes. We can provide whatever agendas we like. And you know, one teacher would only need to recruit 21 students to make $100,000 a year, which is a lot more than she makes. So the additional money will allow us to promote our leftist agendas without any administrative oversight to all of our targeted students, without any fears of people changing our curriculum or banning our books. We can cultivate radicals that we would never be allowed to do in our current setting. So she said, I'd like to be the first in line to apply for my own school. So they need to be careful for what they ask for.
Obviously, that was a whole lot of sarcasm.
Yes.
From that individual.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it was
Yeah.
all in sarcasm. Because of the oversight and the things that we do have in a public system. So, and that's what this resolution talks about. I don't know, I'm sure you've all read it. I don't know if we need to read the thing out loud for those.
Well, what are anybody else's thoughts on this?
Well, we've got to communicate with our legislators, we've got to do it pretty quickly, and this is one way to do it. It's written for us, it's well-written, we've got to do it, we've got to be in touch with these folks, because they're out in left field a lot of times.
My only problem is, I don't believe some legislators listen to us.
Well, they don't.
And they don't care. They have their own agendas, and if they got 22,000 of these, it wouldn't matter. They put them in the same file folder.
But I think it would matter to our staff and to our community that it was very clear that for our teachers, they clearly know our board supports them, even if you're right. It may go in a drawer for some, they may not ever look at it. But I do think for some legislators, it would make a difference, and it does. I think it's on both.
Did anyone get an email from Kevin Cole today?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
And the governor would probably veto it, but the Republicans have a supermajority, and hopefully it will be a few moderate Republicans that would override or would help with the veto. So we don't know yet. Otherwise, we're going to have some serious issues, like this lady said.
I'll make a motion we support this resolution.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded to support the resolution. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
All right, so Amanda will have that for you to sign at the end of this meeting, and she'll forward it on. You want to start?
Yep, we are 10.8, and we need an executive session, and we do have a guest tonight, attorney, to invite in, and then we're also inviting building administrators that are present. And so I would say we probably need to start with...
Mike, he's in the parking lot. I just
Okay,
texted.
I think we need to start with, what is his name?
His name is Anthony McDaniel,
Okay, Anthony McDaniel.
and I think he might have brought a colleague with him.
Okay. All right, so I think we'll
They're in the hallway.
start with 40 minutes, I think.
Okay.
Be a good starting point, and then we'll have to extend, so need a motion, please.
Do you want a break first, or
What's that?
do we need a break first?
We can take a break first.
I need,
Okay, all right, so let's,
Like a 5-minute
we'll
break.
take a 5-minute break. We'll start executive session at 7:30, and it'll be 40 minutes, so anyways.
Motion.
second.
Moved and second, we go into executive session, to discuss confidential employee information pursuant to the non-elected personnel exception under coma, the exception for employer-employee negotiations under coma, and the exception relating to actions adversely or favorably affecting a student under coma at 7:25. Now, we're going to take a break until 7:30, bathroom break. We will enter executive session at 7:30, and we'll return to open session at 8:10. We will also be inviting superintendent, assistant superintendent, building administrators, and we have Anthony McDaniel, and who else, Mr. McDaniel?
Jessica Bernard.
Jessica Bernard will also be invited into the executive session with us. So we have 4 people here to vote, they already walked out, so. Anyways, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we'll start at 7:30 then.
I'm not sure whether I might run back. Here.
Okay, so it's 8:10, we're back in open session. We do need to extend executive session. It'll just be the board superintendent and assistant superintendent this time for 15 minutes. And so if I could get a motion
So
in that
moved.
regard. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, that go into executive session for the same purposes, except we'll just have superintendent and assistant superintendent for 15 minutes. Start at 8:11, open session at 8:26. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Yep, go ahead. All right, we're back in open session here. We're moving to 10.9, action to extend contracts of district managers and directors.
All right, so I would recommend that you approve those managers and directors as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to extend the contracts of the district managers and directors for 23-24 school year as listed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. 10.10, action on personnel.
Okay, we've got two terminations from employment. Travis Ward, middle school evening custodian, effective January the 30th, 2023, and Kristen Park, child nutrition staff, effective February the 16th, 2023. I recommend that you approve those terminations.
Also move.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve those two terminations from employment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
All right, we have resignations from employment. Briley Casper, Garfield STEM instructional aide, effective February the 16th, 2023. Olivia Nolting, middle school head volleyball coach, effective January the 23rd, 2023. Chrissy Coots, Lincoln Library and Title I aide at Lincoln at the end of the year, 2022-23. And Misty Russell, Garfield principal, effective the end of the 22-23 contract year. I recommend that you approve those resignations.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve those resignations from employment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Next.
Okay, and next up, we've got recommendations for employment. Dana Bar Miller, high school assistant volleyball coach, effective the 23-24 season. Joe Campmeyer, middle school fax teacher, effective the 23-24 school year. Eden Serratos, Garfield sweeper, effective February 16th, 2023. Theron English, middle school evening custodian, effective February the 1st, 2023. Andrew Fuentes, high school ISS aide, effective January the 23rd, 2023. Olivia Nolting, high school head volleyball coach, effective the 23-24 season. Jensen Riley, first grade teacher, effective the 23-24 school year. Alyssa Shields, high school graphics design teacher, effective the 23-24 school year. Quentin Trout, Guthridge aide, effective February the 1st, 2023. I recommend that you approve those folks for employment.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve those for employment. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries. No further action. We are adjourned.
Sign that page.
Yeah, we do need to sign the resolution, please. But we are adjourned this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.